So the DA is being accused of intentionally collapsing a Tshwane council meeting at the end of last week, which was due to elect a new mayor. The ANC says the DA did not have the numbers, which is why it says it staged a walkout on Friday. The DA Tshwane caucus leader and mayoral hopeful Cilliers Brink is with us tonight. Very good evening to you, Cilliers. Thank you so much for your time. So did you collapse the meeting on purpose on Friday? Is that why, or was that the goal as you went in?
So let's just give you the backstory to what has happened in Tshwane and that council meeting in particular. And there is a very strong suspicion that councillors of the multi-party coalition, and that is the DA, Action SA, the Freedom Front Plus, the IFP and the ACDP, have come under enormous pressure by the ANC-EFF coalition to vote for their candidates for mayor and speaker, and effectively then to portray their party mandate. Last week, an Action SA councillor alleged and went to the police to make a case of bribery. He said that he was offered 2 million rand in order to vote for Morunwa Makwarela, the Cope councillor who was elected on the ANC-EFF ticket as mayor of Tshwane, and then shortly afterwards was revealed to be an unrehabilitated insolvent. So the parties in the multi-party coalition, as I have listed them, have taken steps to remove folks who have voted against the party mandate or are strongly suspected of coming under this influence. And on Friday, which was the council meeting in question, Action SA effectively ended the membership of 2 of their councillors on this very same suspicion as a matter of internal party discipline. Those councillors were then informed, along with the Speaker of Council, that they could no longer participate in the council meeting because the law is clear. If you cease to be a member of the party that elected you, then you're no longer a councillor. But of course, the Speaker of Council allowed those 2 councillors to continue participating in the meeting. And interestingly, the ANC and the EFF were very adamant that these 2 councillors from Action SA must continue to participate in the meeting, despite no longer being councillors. And that is what the multi-party coalition, not just the DA, the multi-party coalition objected to. We proposed that the council meeting be postponed until Wednesday so that the Speaker could get legal advice, because it doesn't help allowing 2 councillors to vote. And there was also the third from Cope, who apparently has got 2 ID numbers. So there's some question about the legality of his participation in the council meetings. It doesn't help allowing these councillors to vote for a mayor who is then elected with a majority of 2 votes. And then those 3 councillors have a material effect on the outcome. That could mean that the whole thing needs to be set aside, the same thing that we saw with Morunwa Makwarela. The Speaker refused to consider this postponement. He couldn't provide legal advice, and that's why the multi-party coalition said we can no longer participate in what was effectively an unlawful council meeting.
Should the parties from which these councillors came from have not finalized the processes well in advance of time, or well ahead of time, so that there isn't any further delay in dealing with these issues? Because the people of Tshwane, whom we've spoken to as well here on Newzroom Afrika, are quite fed up with the circus and want someone to actually just stand up, lead and get the job done.
Absolutely. Tshwane needs a stable, accountable government to address the issues, to address service delivery, the findings of the Auditor General, and so that we as a city can pass an adjustments budget. If we don't do that, the city is in serious trouble. If we had elected a mayor on Friday whose legitimacy would have been in question, that would have plunged the city into further uncertainty, a Morunwa Makwarela moment 2.0. And that's what the multi-party coalition tried to avoid. So by Wednesday, which was our suggestion that the council meeting be postponed by Wednesday, eventually now the meeting will happen on Wednesday. By then there will be sufficient legal certainty. All of the parties concerned will have their affairs sorted out. But Thembekile, there's one question that we have to ask the ANC and the EFF, and that is, are they bribing councillors of Action SA in order to vote for them? That is a crucial question. We've seen the allegations, but no one's actually put the question to the ANC and the EFF. Because if they're doing so, if they're trying to get hold of power by unlawful means, then they are responsible for the mess that we're in Tshwane, and they must be held fully to account.
Realistically, if you ask the ANC or EF if they were bribing councillors, do you honestly expect, if it were true, either party to say, yes, indeed, we're bribing people?
So I think the demeanor in answering that question, just as putting someone under cross-examination, is going to tell you a lot. If they try to avoid the question, I think there's something to dig at. But I think the important point is to get those parties on record. I mean, I'm here tonight to respond to an ANC allegation that the multi-party coalition didn't have sufficient numbers on Friday. We didn't have sufficient numbers because the Speaker and the ANC-EFF bloc wanted 2 councillors who were suspected of voting for them, for the other side, and whose membership had effectively been terminated, they wanted them to vote. So indeed, but I mean, the important questions here are, let's get them on record, and if they then lie and they're discovered later, that is part of public accountability. And I think these aren't outrageous allegations. If we see what was revealed at the Zondo Commission and even the role of the EFF and the collapse of EBS Bank, these are parties with a propensity for breaking the law in order to achieve certain political outcomes. And I think the people of Tshwane deserve answers as to what is actually going on behind the secret votes in the dark back rooms of power in the city of Tshwane.
As things stand, all but one Action SA councillor has come forward saying that he was offered a bribe, approached in a social setting at a Shisanyama. No one else has come out making an allegation to that effect. And even when I spoke to Action SA, they were saying what they're going on is the word of the councillor in question. How do you even begin to prove that a bribe was paid when all you have in that one instance is the word of one man?
Well, I think once the charge is made at the police, then the Hawks or some other appropriate law enforcement body can look into bank accounts. That's one thing that they can do that we can't do. Look into the bank accounts of councillors. Look into my bank account. Look into the bank accounts of folks who are in the midst of this. And I think that is the point of bringing this forward, so there can be a proper investigation. These allegations are obviously very difficult to prove, but the point of the matter is, at crucial times, between 2 and 7 councillors in the multi-party coalition voted in secret for the other side, voted against their electoral mandate. And the claim by one councillor that he was offered an enormous amount of money surely gives law enforcement grounds to look into matters, to investigate further. And of course, Temekile, this is not the first time that this type of activity has been alleged. When Vasco da Gama, who was the Speaker of Johannesburg, was voted out in a motion of no confidence, 2 councillors in that council alleged that similar amounts of money had been offered to them to vote against Vasco da Gama. When Athol Trollip was the mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, there were certain councillors in that coalition that were apparently offered bribes, and the Hawks are in fact investigating this matter. So, to say that this is a serious issue, that this must be looked into, I don't think that Action SA councillor has made up this story. I think there are very serious grounds for investigating this.
I'm by no means suggesting that he'd made it up, just to be clear. I was just saying that when you look at what is available, it would be his word against the gentleman whom he's accused, who's already denied it. But I want to talk to you about strategy going into the mayoral vote. Numbers are crucial, as you learned the first time that you were fielded as the mayoral candidate for the DA coalition. Your strategy in the vote for a speaker just last week, that backfired. It basically lost you, the speaker's position. 69 ballots spoiled because you opted to basically use a numbering system so that you could detect if there were any, shall we say, quote-unquote, traitors among your fold, right? What are you going to do this time? Because that clearly flopped.
So let me just address the principle of the matter before we get to strategy. I think we've reached the point in South African politics and the fact that we now need coalitions in order to govern large parts of the country, where this idea that politicians should be able to vote in secret for mayors, for premiers, and even for the president is really not compatible with the idea of accountability. if folks vote for a certain political party that promise not to bring the ANC or the EFF to power in the capital city, and the councillors of that political party then go out and do exactly that, you have to be able to hold those people to account. Public representatives don't represent themselves. They represent the public. They're elected on a manifesto. And when it comes to putting a government together, they must be held to account. But talking about what we are going to do, each of the parties in the multi-party coalition in Tshwane have taken disciplinary steps. You've referred to the Action SA members that have been removed. Of course, there was a third Action SA member who was removed last week. And so we're quite confident that having taken these measures, we are certain that the numbers are on our side. Of course, in politics, there are no guarantees, especially in this time of state capture, of bribery, of backroom deals. There really aren't any guarantees. But we are quite confident that the numbers are on our side. And we're also confident that many of the councillors in the multi-party coalition have seen how disorganized the other side is. And the fact that they nominated and then elected unrehabilitated insolvent as their mayor the last time just goes to show that that is one ride to which you don't want to hitch your wagon.
Well, one could argue that there's been a series of rookie errors on either side. I mean, they feel that the candidate who has an insolvency issue faked a certificate allegedly. You went, and yes, we can go back and forth about whether councillors should have the right to vote in a secret ballot or not in council, but as things stand, they are. But it was a rookie error. Are you able now to finally admit that you decided to go with that system of voting when it's now clearly flopped and blown up in your faces to the point where it basically may have cost you the speaker's seat? Whose idea was it to begin with?
So listen, as I mentioned, the principle I've already described. As to the tactic, perhaps it was not subtle enough, but the point is that the multi-party coalition will take steps to hold each of our councillors to account how they vote. And of course, not all votes are held in secret. In fact, most votes in the municipal council aren't in secret. When it comes to voting for a budget, voting for most other policy proposals in council, it will be an open vote. And if folks then vote for the ANC-EFF bloc, then there will be easy grounds to have them removed.
Okay.
But the point is, everything the multi-party coalition, the DA, Action SA, the Freedom Front Plus, ACDP and IFP have done in Tshwane has been in order to place us in a position to keep our promise to the voters. None of these folks who have voted for an ANC-EFF coalition in Tshwane have the electoral mandate to do so. That is what South Africans should be angry about. And really, if we look at the era of coalitions, where coalition agreements will need to be honored, where voting arrangements will have to be implemented by the members of a party, we simply can't have this idea of treating the votes of politicians with the same measure of secrecy that we do ordinary people who vote in an election.
But you can challenge, of course, the fact that the law does allow, as things stand, for people to vote in secrecy for a role such as Speaker. What I'm trying to get to is whether or not you're ready to admit that that was a rookie error. You made the wrong call, and that does not look good even for your voters in Tshwane who were hoping that the DA would bring about some sort of change, if indeed it is the party, to do that.
So we have not tried to hide what our strategy was in Tshwane.
Was it a terrible strategy?
No, it wasn't a terrible strategy. As we discussed, there are allegations of bribery. There's clear betrayal of the electoral mandate. It's important that we discuss the principle whether it's a good thing to allow politicians to vote in secret, a system that is susceptible to bribery.
Right. So,
there
but
will be many
bumps.
Sorry, let me just finish.
No, you've made the point around that already. What I'm saying is we can go back and forth about you possibly even challenging whether those secret votes should be able to happen. What I'm saying is until that has been successfully challenged, you have to admit as the DA that you made the wrong call. And it backfired because what you were trying to do is basically something that would have been that would have allowed you to identify people, which would have gone against what is allowed in the secret ballot dispensation, which, until it's successfully challenged, remains allowed.
There will be many bumps in the road if you're facing what is effectively a criminal organization that is your political opposition. Of course, we'll make tactical errors, but the point is we are fighting to enforce and to keep our electoral mandate, to keep our promise to the voters of Tshwane. And what the focus and the outrage should not be about a party trying to determine whether their representatives have kept their promise, as all of us have done in the multi-party coalition. The outrage and the questions and the scrutiny must be about who is inducing councillors of a different party to vote for the ANC-EFF coalition. Why, on Friday, did the ANC insist that the 2 Action SA members who have been expelled be kept in council with such fervour that they were even allowed to persuade the Speaker to make an unlawful ruling? That should be the focus of public scrutiny and public attention, with all due respect.
Well, we could also argue that if these are the strategies you're using, it's a long road ahead if you're going to catch anyone who's using money and other tactics to basically keep ahead of you in the vote.
Well, there are issues about strategy and tactics, and there are issues about right and wrong. And what I would submit to you is that the issues about what is right and wrong, about honesty and integrity, are more important than discussions about tactics.
But it's also not right, according to electoral law, to try and use a numbering system to identify individuals in a secret vote. That is a fact.
The Electoral Act does not apply to these votes. It is the Municipal Structures Act.
That's exactly what I mean, which is why you've now not gone to court.
We do not believe that the votes of politicians should be secret. And if we have to fight that in court, we're willing to do it.
But until you've done that, you were wrong.
Let me just say that we are confident that we've taken the measures as the multi-party coalition to keep our promise. Of course, there are no guarantees in politics, but we're going into Wednesday's council meeting with folks who are willing to uphold their promise to the voters and elect a stable, accountable government for the city of Tshwane.
Cilliers Brink, good to speak to you. Thank you for your time tonight.